In this video, I want to share with you a bait finesse fishing style that's been growing very popular in Japan lately to a point where Daiwa got to create a new reel for it. And this fishing style is called PEBF fishing. And the reel that I'm talking about is the new Daiwa Steez Limited CTSVTW. What a long name, but the price is also crazy. But anyway, this video is not about the reel itself, but I will talk a little bit about it later, specifically the specs, so that you can understand this fishing style better. To lay out the foundation of the video, I will tell you about the definition of PEBF fishing and what's it about right off the get-go. And then as you guys can see, the title and also the thumbnail, this is a form of Power BFS fishing. However, this term, Power BFS fishing, it's been a controversial term outside of Japan. So I guess it's a good time to stir up the pot. So I'll share with you the definition that I have heard, and yeah, I'll tell you what I feel about each one. And then I'll share with you some of the specs of the new reel, the Steez, and why this reel is going to solve the problems with the current flux of bait finesse reels out on the market. And then I'll tell you why I feel like this bait finesse style is going to take bait finesse to the next level, especially in the US. And lastly, I know a lot of people already looked at the price for this reel. It's crazy expensive. So are there any alternative reels? Yes, they are. And let me share with you some of those at the end of the video. So with that said, let's get this video started. So what is PEBF fishing? As the name has suggested, it is going to be bait finesse using braided line, but not thin ultralight braid line, okay? I know as a ultralight enthusiast, I have been portraying bait finesse in a way that's more of a general and also ultralight style, but this specific technique and Power BFS and all those BFS stuff that comes from Japan is actually more oriented to bass fishing, okay? Yes, there's still trout fishing with bait finesse gears, there's still saltwater, but when they use the term bait finesse, is really for the bass industry. And for this specific one right here, it's going to be using thicker PE, not the ultralight stuff, okay? It's going to be primarily between 1 to 1.5 go. Japanese anglers would tie their PE line directly to lures, and they'll be fishing in cover. And I can see why, because if you use thin line like I've been portraying, okay, the bait finesse thin line that I use, they are very fragile. You rub that thing into a couple branches, it'll fray up and it'll be gone. Okay, and then also some folks use it for topwater lures, especially those who fish for snakeheads, and that's something I've been doing in the past. So we'll talk all about that a little later. So doesn't this fishing style sound familiar to you? Power BFS fishing, right? That's something that I've been personally floating in my channel, like specifically using this style. If you actually look at the product page of the Steez page and you translate it, you will see that Daiwa said, and they actually used the word so-called power finesse. And I guess they use the word so-called because they don't want to use air quotes, right? But basically they're air quoting power finesse for this reel. This reel is for power finesse, whether you're using mono, fluoro, or PE line. So what exactly is Power BFS fishing? As I have mentioned, right, this is pretty controversial in the fishing community, right? So what I've done was I've been reading on the forums and the groups, right? And I see primarily 3 definitions of what people think Power BFS fishing. So why don't we talk about them, okay? And then you guys can feel free to let me know what you guys think. And then I'll also let you guys know the definition that I'm leaning towards. So the first definition is going to be a little long to talk about this specific one because, well, some folks are saying that the traditional bait finesse fishing style is Power BFS. So in order to say what is traditional BFS, I think we need to talk about the errors of bait finesse, okay? So from what I've been seeing and since when I followed bait finesse, okay? So bait finesse started, let's say about a span of 20 years right now. And in around 2005 to let's say 2015, that would be the early stage, okay? And the early stage, bait finesse started with 8 to 12 pounds. Like that's the line they used. And that's the reels that were in the market. However, as you get closer to 2015, the demand of finesse, they want it smaller. They want reels that could throw lighter lures. So in order to solve that, there's aftermarket companies creating shallower spools, lighter spools, right, to fill in the niche. Okay, so that's when I was actually like get into bait finesse. But you know, a lot of people like me who is not in Japan, you know, it's really hard to get these really good shallow spools, right, and also other parts to modify reels. Okay, so fast forward to 2015, Shimano brings out BFS stuff. So they basically created a term called bait finesse system. It's their marketing term for bait finesse products, their lineup. okay? And because these reels comes with super shallow spool right out the box, no one needs to do any modifications. I think that's why bait finesse blew up then. 2015, you have the old outer bearing using centrifugal braking, and then 2016, you have the outer bearing with the FTP braking system. So those 2 years consecutively, and then of course there's Scorpion as well, okay? So those 3-year span with all that BFS products, that's why the global market decided to call the whole bait finesse stuff BFS, because Shimano is the one who kind of blew it up with that super shallow. It met the niche, okay? So I believe, and I think most people believe, that that era will define what traditional BFS is. And they would use 6 to 8 pound fluorocarbon line on, let's say, light plus to medium light power rods, okay? So that's traditional. And some folks define that as the Power BFS, because lately, let's say past 4 years, the trend for ultralight bait finesse been so high in demand that they need to figure out how to make these reels cast even lighter lures. And the best way to do it is they create these super small 28 millimeter spools, and they're very, very fragile for ultralight bait finesse fishing. And they would use 4 to 6 pound fluorocarbon, and they don't even use PE. It's mainly folks like me who want to put PE to make the spool even lighter so you can throw even lighter lures. Okay, so that is it. And well, I feel like I disagree. I feel like the word traditional BF is its own entity itself. But let me know in the comments below. We're going to move on and talk about the second definition now. So definition 2, going to be very short, okay? So it's like traditional BF fishing, okay? The gear is very similar, but it's next step up. You just be using thicker line. So if you're a fluorocarbon user or mono user, you'll be using 8 to 10 pounds instead of 6 to 8 pounds. So just slightly up, okay? And then for PE, you could use 1 to 1.5 go, maybe even more. But the Japanese are currently using 1 to 1.5 go. And I think if you look at the product page from Steez, you translate it to English, that's pretty much how Daiwa sees it, and this is how I see it as well. Okay, the very, very last definition, right? I think the least amount of people have said it, but I have seen it, and they argue very, very strong for this. And they define Power BFS fishing as basically power fishing using bait finesse gears. While I could see that, right? But that really doesn't tell you much about the gears unless you made some assumptions, right? Like you got to do it with thicker line. It's pretty obvious, right? So yeah, I really just don't think so. And I think because the community, there's only like less than a handful that argues it. But like I said, they argue very strong for it. I really don't think that this is the definition. So there you have it, the controversial debate of what Power BFS fishing. If I were to look from an outside of Japan perspective of how bait finesse is kind of categorized, to me, I like to keep things simple. I would say there's ultralight BF, traditional BF, and then Power BF. And notice that I just keep saying BF right now instead of BFS, instead of Power BFS, because, well, you think about it, in Japan itself, they actually say bait finesse. It's outside of Japan where we said BFS, and I said that before. I think it's because of Shimano releasing the super shallow spool and made bait finesse very popular that people just end up using their trademark name, BFS. It's kind of like, do you use tissues or do you use Kleenex, right? A lot of people, depending on which part of the country you are, in the US, you say Kleenex. Okay, let's talk about the Steez, specifically about the spool. Like, pretty much everything on the reel is similar to what's already out there in the market, like the drag, right? It's 4.5 kg, pretty much standard. What's unique about this reel here is the spool. It's going to solve the problem for bait finesse, power bait finesse. So the spool is deeper than the current flock of super shallow spools. The super shallow spools, definitely you put a lot of line when it's super thin, but when you jump to the next level up, well, you can lose line, a lot of capacity, okay? You're losing a lot. So therefore, they needed a deeper spool. And this reel here is so expensive. It's 82,500 yen. So I don't know how much it's gonna cost if there's a tariff being implemented soon. So I don't think I'll get this reel anytime soon. I may. I don't know. I don't know if you guys can afford it, but it's expensive. So I will give you guys a couple alternatives in the future. But I hope that this style is continuing to pick up so that perhaps this spool will appear in a a cheaper model in the future. But anyway, let's talk about the spool, okay? You definitely want to know the capacity so that you can understand why this is going to be better, okay? So 8 pounds fluorocarbon, it can hold anywhere between 25 to 50 meters. If you look at the spool, there's actually a midpoint line. Like if you want to spool up halfway, for those who don't need the distance, you could keep the spool light so you can throw a little lighter lures. Like if you look at the product page, this spool here, it says it could throw under 5 grams. So my assumption, because when they say under 5 grams, 5 grams is likely when the spool is max. But if you put less line on, you could potentially throw less. So I don't know how less. Maybe one day I'll find out. Okay. But as you can see, this spool here is definitely gonna be heavier because if you look at it at the 8 pounds perspective, 8 pounds is thin. Okay, so therefore it stretches. If you look at many other bait finesse reels that's super shallow, they're super thin, right? Super shallow and super thin, and they have a chance of warping. So the best way to prevent warping is not over spooling, because if you put too much line on the spool, right? If you watch those videos where the watermelon explodes when you put too much rubber bands, that's kind of like how it is, especially when you put too much drag, right? But as you can see, you can put 5 meters more than its predecessors for 8 pounds. So likely the spool is definitely a little bit more stronger or thicker. Therefore, I guess that's why they say 5 grams, right? So yeah, it's not going to be made for the ultralight side. Okay, and in fact, when you fish in cover, you're not using the super thin hooks anyway, right? So I think it'll be okay. But anyhow, if you look at the capacity for 10 pounds, you can hold 20 to 40 meters, which is pretty good. I know some tournament anglers will still want to use fluoro, especially in those clear water, and you're not really fishing into that super thick cover, or you simply just need thicker hooks for some of those bigger fish. Okay, especially tournament anglers, it's heartbreaking if you hook up a big giant fish and your terminal tackle is just too thin. And in order to successfully land those big fish for a paycheck, well, you better be using the proper gear. So you need some of the thicker gauge finesse hooks in order to handle those bigger fish, right? Anyway, if you look at PE side, okay, once again, it's rated for 1 go to 1.5 go. If you are spooling up with 1 go, you can have plenty of line. 120 meters, that's a lot. So you're fishing deep waters and you're not necessarily fishing cover, you could do that. You add some leader, right? So if you're up like Great Lakes and you're fishing anywhere between, I don't know, 15, 30 feet, it's great. You cast it out there, let's sink, plenty of line, especially those strong smallies. But if you're fishing in cover, it goes up to 1.5 go, and you can put 80 meters, which is way plenty enough, okay? Like you fish in cover, you're pretty much close range, so you don't really need that. You only need it for if the fish runs super far. Personally, I've been using around 1.5 go for my fishing. I've been fishing swamps for bass and snakeheads, throwing like small, tiny hollow-bodied frogs, or even soft plastic lures like Elastec, because it stays on top, and it's so much fun Power BFS fishing with PE line. So yeah, as you see, this deeper spool is going to solve a lot of problems with the current flock of bait finesse reels. As I mentioned, the last 4 years, pretty much everyone is into the ultralight side, so therefore you have a lot smaller spools, the 28 millimeter spools. They're fragile too. They're thin in order to keep light, to throw that 1 gram lure, right? But when you're power finesse fishing, you gotta use thicker line, heavier stuff. So I would say the 28 millimeter spool is not gonna work well, especially if you use a mono or fluoro, because that will definitely, most certainly, damage the spool. I think it might be okay for close quarter fishing, but for 28 millimeter spools, you can't use the super thick one. You could probably get away with 1 go. Now, for the larger bait finesse reels out there in the market, you could definitely use it for PE BF fishing. However, you likely may not have enough capacity for the thicker lines. So you can still use it, but I think it's mainly for close quarter fishing. For those who need it for deep water, like thick line for deep water, you may not have the capacity to achieve that type of fishing style. As you see, this new Steez is going to be solving a lot of problems for Power BFS fishing, especially the new hot and rising style PE BF fishing. And note that the spool is not deeper than the old school style, like the Daiwa Pixie or the Shimano Aldebaran MGL 30. Those spools are a lot deeper. I would say the new era for power finesse fishing is going to be in between that in the current flock of super shallow bait finesse spools. So PEBF fishing, why do I think this is going to be the style of fishing that will grow bait finesse to the next level, especially in the US? Well, if you guys have been advocating BFS for some time now, like I have, you guys probably hear a lot of pushback, and I think a lot of these pushback will be solved at PEBF fishing or power finesse fishing. Okay, so let me give you some examples. Floridians have been saying to me, it's great that you're catching multi-species in those canals, right? But a lot of my waters, it got a lot of thick cover and I got a lot of big fish and I cannot use thin line. I need thicker line, and when I use thicker line, I don't have enough capacity. So this should solve that problem for Floridians and anyone else who, like me, fish South Jersey. It's pretty much swamps here, okay? And speaking of swamps, right, I think it also will grow the snakehead fishing industry, okay? A lot of folks like to throw small frogs, small lures for snakeheads. So do I, okay? And using spinning setup is tough, okay? Because you need a large reel to hold those thicker PE line. What happened is when you use thick line and you cast on a spinning setup, it depletes so quick that spiral gets smaller and smaller and it rubs on the top of the spool, causing less casting distance. My friends who fish with snakeheads, in order to solve the problem, they basically had to buy a size 3000 reel for throwing light lures. And I was like, dude, that thing is heavy. He's like, yeah, I know, but I can't use a bait caster. I was like, gotta learn, man, gotta learn. But yeah, I think this will grow as snakehead fishing grows in the US. And lastly, I think inshore fishing. Great opportunity for inshore fishing, okay? I've been using, let's say, the Daiwa Silver Wolf for chinning, all right? A chinning reel. Basically, it's a Japanese porgies, and they use thin line. Well, technically, we use that reel too for power finesse, PEBF fishing, right? And use thicker line. But yeah, a lot of folks are using PE line fish inshore because you need the thin line in order to get deeper water with all the current and wind. And well, sometimes you just need capacity, right? Some fish just runs. So it could be an opportunity for inshore fishing in the US. So you're probably wondering if there's any products out there that you use right now for PEBF fishing that is not the Steez, because it's not really out yet. It's out in February and it's just super expensive. What are alternatives, right? So yes, there are some alternatives. The best one out there that I could share with you is also from Daiwa, and that is the 2022 Daiwa Alphas SVTW800S. The Steez spool is actually a size 30, whereas the Alphas is a size 32. So it's slightly bigger and it has a little bit more capacity. But I've been using this reel so far for my PEBF fishing, and it's been fantastic. And it is so much cheaper. You guys can get this reel at Amazon, Digitaka, PLAT code JP, Japan Lure Shop. I will leave some link in the description below. For anyone on a tight budget and you want to try out PEBF fishing, check out Tsurinoya Hurricane HE50. This reel is available at Bait Finesse Empire. Personally, I would avoid size 28mm spools because one, they're small, okay? They're small and they may not have the capacity you need, and likely they're super fragile. I mean, some of the size 30 to 32 are pretty fragile as well, so I would not recommend putting, let's say, mono for power BF fishing. But using P, I think it's okay, given that you guys are not using full power drag. But some of the reels that are currently available on the market would be, let's say, the KastKing Zephyr BFS, the Shimano Curado SLX BFS, Bait Handle LTS. You could try the Daiwa Silver Wolf, or heck, you can even try Abu Garcia Revo X BFS. I know I did not give it a lot of love for this reel for the ultralight side, but that reel screens pretty much power BFS, PEBFS, and likely we'll see Mike Iaconelli use this bait finesse reel, PEBF fishing style this season. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video about PEBF fishing. Let me know in the comments below if you're going to be fishing this, or if you guys have already been fishing it. Let me know what your setup is, because I am very curious, as I will be definitely doing some PEBF fishing, and I'm exploring a lot of different tackle and fishing techniques. If you are interested in seeing PEBF fishing videos, whether I'm portraying tackle or fishing techniques, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell notification. I thank you all for watching. The fish don't wait. Get your bait finesse game on at Bait Finesse Empires.